And welcome back once again to the Writer Brothers. Tonight I am joined by my usual guests, my co-host, as well as my good friend Curione, Witch in Residence. Gentlemen, welcome back to the show. How are you this evening?
Very good, very good. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm showing up here enough. I'm starting to feel like the writer, like stepbrother or cousin or something like that. So this is awesome.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely have to think of an official, more official title for you. Tonight we're going to be discussing the latest and greatest of Apple TV's Severance, and man, have we got a lot to unpack with that just by itself. But then after that, we will be taking a look at Apple TV's Macbeth and the Academy Award winner for Best Picture, Apple TV's Coda. So why don't we go ahead and dive right in to Severance? Oh, of course. 1 second. So why don't we go ahead and dive right into Severance? So, John, why don't you go ahead and start us out with your thoughts on that today?
Severance. I really enjoyed the character development of this last episode. We finally got to see Irving and the other characters actually, what's the word? Like, express themselves as their innies. We finally have a cause to get behind. Each of the individual characters feels a lot more like they all have their own reasons for fighting the system. And I feel like even though it took until episode 7 for us to get there finally, I feel like it was well worth the wait. Like the time they took to get to know each person, now that they're fighting something, I really want to see them fight.
Absolutely. I feel like now we've now got enough value on each of the characters. We not only understand why they're fighting, but we're cheering them on now. We definitely feel like it's not only reasons, but they're good reasons and they're legitimate reasons. Whoever's been writing this has done some really deep character work, and it's really starting to pay off now, especially with the conflicts that we're seeing between some of the characters and their reasoning and their logic for going through all of this.
Yeah, I completely agree. John, why don't you continue to share some of your thoughts?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the fact that these characters have a much more personal justification for their fighting, for their arguments for why they're trying to descend, or causing dissent. But at the same time, like, I'm starting to question who the big bad really is. Because as we've discussed in previous episodes, we know that Kobel and even Milicek are both seemingly entirely severed. Like whatever history they may or may not have had doesn't exist anymore. And that interests me in such a way that, like, if they're not the big bad, who is? But at the same time, how are they going to react to the rebellion? Like, are they going to be willing to put it down, or are they going to fight back? And that to me seems very hard to guess, even this late in the series.
Yeah, I'm actually wondering if they are fully severed, or if their, for lack of a better term, their version of an Audi is actually the big bad and is directing their innies to not necessarily be the big bad.
Wow, that is that just put me in a different mind entirely. So they're out, like when they say praise Kier, one of them might actually actively be Kier.
Exactly.
And they don't even know. Oh man, that is such a circle of thought. They're controlling themselves and working for themselves without being both people. That's an even trippier version of events. Like, how does that work?
Well, when you think about it, right, the best way to make sure that, the top or the mastermind stays out of the day-to-day affairs is make him seem like a mid-tier employee, right? Like a middle manager almost. So that everyone assumes, well, he's not the one pulling the shots or like calling the shots. He's just executing the behaviors that he's been told to. But in reality, he's actually the one who's calling the shots. Keeps him kind of safe in a weird way.
Yeah, it definitely does keep him safe, especially because we don't know if it's a him or not, because they keep calling it the board. And you don't you don't hear the responses from the board other than that just eerie static. And then, that just makes me, it feels like I haven't even watched the whole show. Now that I feel like I have to go back and rewatch it from that perspective to see if maybe that's the real thing that's going on. Is like, what if the Macrodot people are the ones doing this to each other? That would, oh my goodness, that's wild. That's that's such a fun thought.
Well, I mean, it wouldn't be the first series to pull something like this. The ending to Dollhouse was very similar, and I'm seeing a lot of parallels between Dollhouse and Severance now that I've kind of gone through both of them a few more times just to see that. So I'm wondering if that's going to be part of the twist of this.
Yeah, I feel like that would be such an interesting twist to do in this, because even though we're getting the chance to see, like, say, Mark and his Audi, we even saw somebody like actually retire. I think it changes everything in terms of which one is the one that's in charge. And yeah, that's such a bizarre thought in terms of whether or not they're actually, are they rebelling? If it is against themselves, like, do they just need a video to put them back in their place and restart? Or do they just need to get severed from this version of Severance to go back to the beginning? I really wonder.
The latest episode of Severance. Curion, you definitely had a very good theory there about whether or not, or who... Oh, now I just forgot what you were talking about. Anyway, please continue.
Well, I was figuring that one of the characters, there's a very good chance that one of them is actually either a member of the board or the board. The logic being that it insulates them in a very unique way, in that everyone figures, well, they're just middle management, or there's somebody that they know couldn't possibly be on the board, and using that severance tech or that severance idea so that they avoid suspicion from being the actual head of the company.
Yeah, and that would definitely make a lot of sense. I did find it interesting how Irving basically called out Milicek right to his face that, he's not severed, or unless, we find out that they're permanently severed. That still remains to be seen. I was a very good, just a lot happened in this episode overall, but man, did I not see the twist ending coming. That was quite the surprise.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
I mean,
definitely baffled. I was also surprised that I forget his name every time, Mr. Grainer. I had to go back and rewatch that episode 6 again, just so I could figure out how, like, they'd gotten in the same room and then he just kills him right out the gate. I was so surprised by that just attack. It just didn't feel like it was part of the story until it was, and it suddenly changed the whole dynamic of the events. Like, the people that are trying to reintegrate people or put them back together, they just didn't seem coordinated until now. Like, she knew exactly what she was doing, even though Mark had no idea. That was so weird. I really want to know who that person is.
I
in the
definitely
big
don't
story.
think I don't think she's working alone. I think there's more to what she's doing and who's helping her out that we have yet to be exposed to. And I did think that it was, I agree with you. That was kind of interesting that her immediate response was to just kill him and not even give it a second thought. And so it's like, okay, now we're back to Carrie Own's theory of exactly who are the bad guys, but then who are we supposed to be rooting for? I mean, I'm definitely rooting for the innies at this point because they've clearly been drugged through the ringer, and so now they have a cause, which I'm very excited about to see how the rest of this season is definitely gonna. I'm excited, and I definitely think I'm less worried about the mystery box writing than I was when we started this venture, and I definitely think that the characters and the story were all well thought out, and I think that that's exactly what we see playing out right now. So it's good. I'm thoroughly enjoying it so far.
Yeah, I think those the worrisome mystery boxes at the beginning of them actually did have a real plot behind it, and we're seeing those opened and actually going somewhere. It definitely feels like the entire series has been at the very least plotted out, if not written completely. So they know where they want to take this, and it's very clear that this is not just a bunch of writers sitting in a room panicking, going, "Okay, well, we got to come up with filler for the next episode, and we need to do it right now." I think they knew where they were going with this from day one.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Go ahead, Parker.
So how do we think this is going to play out? What kind of theories do we think we have for this one? And what do you think it looks like as far as how this one wraps up?
To be honest, I have no idea where this is gonna go, especially because now that like we've really been talking about it for every week, I really think about the emotion, the importance of emotion on their job, but the complete lack of emotion while working. And I wonder if that's something we've just completely missed throughout the whole series so far. Is that what if, especially with Carrie Own's opinion, in terms of if they're controlling themselves or if one of them is controlling all of them, what if the emotional thing, like the part where the emotions are what tells them where to put the boxes, the emotions are what tell them what numbers to collect, what if that is what makes Cobell go off, where she says, I did that because I knew you could handle it and you needed it. To me, that just sparks so many thoughts on, like, how does she judge that? Was it just her, justifying herself, which is what most of us do when we have an outburst, or was it a scheduled anger moment? I don't know. I don't know where this is going.
I don't either. Go ahead.
I have a feeling that by the last episode of this season, we're going to lose one of the innies. He's not going to lose his Audi, but we're going to lose one of the innies. Something is going to happen where one of our main characters, one of the characters we're really rooting for, is going to die. But death in this series is kind of weird because if you can kill off the innie without necessarily killing off the Audi. And we could see that innie coming back again next season as a brand new innie.
That's such a weird... Yeah, that's a real thing with this story.
Yeah, no, that's quite the mind blower right there.
So I have a feeling that that's what we're going to see in the last episode. One of the innies is going to die and is going to be replaced by a brand new version of their innie. For lack of a better term, they're going to get like a reset of some sort, right?
Are you saying like a resever and they have to start the whole process over again?
I think so.
Do you think they could do that without the group noticing, or do you think the whole group would get reset at different stages?
Oh no, I think the group is going to notice, but they're now going to be stuck in a situation with, well, is this new Innie a mole? Are they actually working for the board now? Do we know? Is there any way to tell?
Yeah, why are they
So the
so
first half,
special to come back? Petey didn't come back.
exactly.
That's
I
so
think
interesting.
I think playing off of that, I think it's going to be Dylan. I think Dylan's going to be the one that if they go that route, he's going to be the one that they select to kill and then resever, and then they're going to give him this whole like, you're a secret agent and you're finding out what these people are up to, but they think that you're this type of person, so you need to behave this way, and that's what's going to that's what's going to happen, because I mean Dylan's the candidate for that, right? Like, he's the one who
Right.
keeps coming up with the crazy theories of, oh, my Audi's probably a total badass on the outside world. And so what better way to bring him back or have him already set up to be that person from the get-go? Like, for all we know, there could already be a mole within their group the entire time, and they've just been kind of, I don't know, sleeping on it. That really has a lot of implications, Curion. That's a fantastic theory, honestly, because now that's got us talking about it, and that the implications with that are endless, because now it's like, how many other people could they do this for, where they kill them and then bring them back, and how many times is for all we know, that's been Irving's life. Say that he's been there the longest. Well, the longest time is 2 years. And we don't know how long the
Mark's
Severance
been there
program's
too.
been around. Say again?
That's it.
It was finally explained. So Irving's 3 years, Mark's at 2. This
Oh, okay.
is the order of hierarchy. Dylan's somewhere between Mark and Irving and Helly. But Helly's the newest.
Yeah.
But I think Mark was newer than Dylan. Dylan is definitely the prime candidate for cure, because his Audi was so okay with being put in the closet for that like moment, and he didn't even care about Milicek being in his house manhandling his son. He was just like, "Are we good? I'm gonna go back to watching TV." Like, are we good? Like, he was aware of the royal we in the group. That my question though with the resevering is, I feel like they would have to take the whole group down. Like I feel like it would start with like season 2, Helly's back on the table. And instead of Mark ever remember Petey, he's set back to like a different time as well. And maybe Dylan or Irving takes over as the trainer and they do all the training. And so like we just don't see how like I feel like Mark and Helly are two independent people versus Irving and Dylan are very like okay with this whole event until Dylan became like, I gotta see who my son is.
See, the reason why I don't think they have to reset everybody, it has a very interesting critique on corporate paranoia. Again, don't know how much work you guys have done in like big corporate America kind of companies, but
Serve
that's
the biggest
a
corporation
constant.
known as the U.S. military.
Yeah, well, there you go. So yeah, you're well aware that like, somebody comes back after a meeting with officers and you're always wondering, well, what exactly happened in that meeting, right? And paranoia is one of those things that can definitely come up, especially if after somebody comes back from like a large meeting or something, somebody else gets in trouble or gets disciplined for something. Because then you wonder, well, have I got a snitch with me, right?
Yeah.
So they won't mention anything until, they're absolutely certain that that person isn't a snitch.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And
it's like a Tarkin doctrine, like fear will keep them in line, right?
yeah,
Exactly.
and not to mention it could be that the person that gets resevered, i.e. Mark, everybody else is living with that memory of this is what happens to you until it happens to one of the other ones. End of season 2, like, oh, now it's Dylan this time, or it just any of the characters getting resevered tells everybody else, keep messing around, we'll do it again.
Yep.
That's such a terrible feeling, especially when you take in that corporate thought of like, well, we tried to give you the chance to be the boss. Now you're back to being the day one newbie.
So
that's so scary.
John, so I think we may be onto something here. I could see season 1 wrapping up with a very satisfying ending, and then season 2 is probably going to open up. It's pretty much the same as season 1, and I think you're going to be right. I think you're right, John. I think there's going to be a reshuffling of jobs, and then we're going to be like, well, what happened this time? And then it's going to be figuring out that, oh, so the victory that you thought you had in season 1, no, that's what the board was wanting the whole time. They were actually, in control of the situation from the get-go. They just made it look like, oh, the good guys won. At least, I don't know. That's just what I think could happen.
Yeah, if you go back to the pictures, if you go back to all of the, I guess it would be gossip that Dylan's spreading, like he remembers that there was a war maybe, or he's heard rumors that there was some kind of internal war. And then if you also add in that whole mousetrap theory that you had last episode, it makes it even worse because, like, what if the whole goal is to just figure out how to get these people to listen and they just know they're not there yet? Like, they have to redo a couple of things, change the system a little bit, give it a couple tweaks every once in a while to get it to peak control, and they know they're still experimenting on that peak control. That's terrifying.
Yeah. No, the show's still... Okay, so of course the other big reveal was the fact that the pregnant lady was possibly severed for the duration of her pregnancy.
Yeah.
Any additional thoughts? I mean, this episode really just was a huge exposition dump, but man, was it exciting all the way through. Just the whole the whole implication of creating a second consciousness just for 9 months, and that's all it exists to do is go through the pregnancy. I mean, now we're really getting into the implications of this show.
Yeah, and I mean, we're also getting into the, like, sci-fi-ish implications of the technology, right? Like, if you had the ability to pick a section of your life and just cut that out temporarily and leave, like, a other you to go deal with that, would you choose to do it? For anything, for any sort of scenario. Something that was just uncomfortable, or, would you rather experience your life as lived?
A life of eternal bliss.
Yeah, it's like any... Like, I mean, imagine an environment or a world where you could set your brain up so that anytime you feel like just the littlest bit of pain, an alternate you takes over and deals with that. Or, say, a crisis, an alternate you takes care of that. And then when everything's calmed back down, you go back to happy-go-lucky you. So that's crazy. All right, continue. But I mean, that's the interesting question sci-fi gets to ask. Like, would you choose to do this if you had the technology available?
It's so crazy because that, like, ties in with the CIA's MK Ultra in terms of, like, trying to create sleeper agents that are literally sleeping until necessary. And if that's what this whole thing is about, is like them, developing that, like they did it with the 9 months of pregnancy, and she didn't wake up. Any of the labor, any of the actual physical stress of going through pregnancy wasn't enough to override the code. That's like kind of what you need in your sleeper agent, is like once they go active, no matter what they get into, they never wake up. That's so... It keeps making the world possibly bigger and more painful, but also so much more worth watching.
Well, yeah, I mean, 100%. Speaking of MK Ultra, I mean, literally imagine an agent that has plausible deniability for anything you have them do because you simply switch them off and they have no knowledge of whatever they're being accused of. Because how could they? Totally
Yeah,
different
and
person.
not to mention like turning them off of sleeper mode while they're being tortured. So they literally cannot answer questions because they literally were not there. And then
Yeah.
turn it back on when they're free. Like they send a code like, boss, I'm gonna be late today, and then it's like and now they're back as James Bond. It's such a cool it's a cool idea, but also a terrible one because then it's like who isn't a sleeper agent anymore?
Yeah, this is quickly becoming technology that I hope remains forever imaginary because this is not something I want to ever have to deal with in the real world. Um,
Nor would you
I mean,
remember dealing with it if it happened to you.
I definitely wouldn't mind. Like, I don't know if I'd go so far as to sever myself from work, but if I could, like, create a gym bro personality, I think I could probably do that. Just have a guy who exists for 45 minutes a day to go to the gym, and that might be something worth considering. But a full-on 8-hour workday, that's a third of your life that, while we do, more or less give it up at the workplace, is that really worth not remembering? Because your brain's going to forget about it anyway. So it just sucks when you're in the moment doing the grind. But when you go home, at least when I go home, to quote Ted Lasso, I try to be a goldfish. It's the day's over. It's time to move on. So I don't know. I just the idea sounds good, but as this show continues to explore, and as we've actually just explored ourselves, even just talking about it, the implications are very, very bad.
Well, yeah, especially if you think about just losing 45 minutes in that sleeper window. Like when you go to your body goes to the gym, what's to say it didn't leave? What's to say it didn't get grabbed? What's to say you didn't lose your wallet? And you can never go back to those 45 minutes and be like, oh, that's where I put it. No, it's gone.
Although it does kind of remind me of being in university and the difference between drunk Mike and sober Mike. Because drunk Mike was kind of awesome to sober Mike. He'd always like leave a sandwich or whatever for the morning. So like I was always a big fan of drunk Mike, and I'd wake up in the morning and like there'd be like food or what have you all prepared for the day, and I'd be like, way to go, drunk Mike! Like way to plan ahead. So I guess it depends on your alternate mode, I suppose, right?
Yeah, it depends on which one is more in charge and which one loves the other one more.
Yeah.
Because it feels like, in this case, Audi Mark is significantly more okay with the system just because it has been doing him a lot of favors. And so he doesn't put himself through hell every night. But he does always seem to come in regularly hungover. And I think that plays a major, effect on the innie. They're like, well, if my Audi's always hungover, does that mean they're a desperate drunk on the outside? Or does that mean that they're going through a thing I'm not going through? And at that point, that causes that dissent, even if it's not, entangled.
Absolutely. I mean, literally, we're watching Mark get away with a life free of consequence, right?
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have to worry about being hungover. He doesn't, really work for his money when you think about it. The money just magically appears as far as Audi Mark is concerned, right? He's like, he sleeps for 8 hours. He gets to party for 8 hours, and then as far as he's concerned, he sleeps for 8 hours. And then parties for 8 hours. If you had a life like that, would you care what happened to your work life? Really? Would you value the party part of your life that you get?
Yeah, and I think it's something this show's actually taking the time to question, especially in Mark, because it's not until his whole world starts fighting the fact that he's severed that he finally starts on the outside feeling like maybe, just maybe, he did it wrong. the episodes where he's talking to Pete, he's like, no, I'm doing this because I need to just not let the sorrow of losing my wife ruin my work life. And because of that, he's just constantly, like, he has every reason to love it, but now the whole world around him, like his girlfriend, the concerts, losing Petey even showing up in the first place, this other lady showing up now, all of them are like, no, wake up, like shaking him awake. And it's like we're watching him take a long time to get there. Whereas like his Annie, it only took like 4 or 5 instances, and he suddenly was like, I'm going to be on my team side before I'm going to be on my boss's side.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Definitely. A lot of good discussion. And who knows what we can expect with tonight's episode and follow-on episodes. But as we mentioned on our social media, this is tonight is pretty much an Apple TV showcase, so to speak. But I guess that's what happens when you create good content, right?